Blake Toppmeyer with Will Backus of the Knoxville News Sentinel, recapping Tennessee football's Saturday open practice. Will and I were on hand for that, along with about 1,500 Vols fans on what turned out to be a pretty nice Saturday morning before the rain came in. Will, I want to move on to some particular position battles as we unfold here, but just in general, what were kind of your takeaways from Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about specific position battles recently, but kind of big takeaways was we got a good look at maybe what the defensive alignment will look at. The defensive staff so far has kind of been playing it close to the chest, but they were in kind of a 5 defensive back alignment most of the day Friday with 2 linebackers and then 4 linemen. Tim Banks has experience running that at Penn State and other places he's stopped before. There could be some 4-3 sprinkled in there as well. So that was a big kind of overarching thing. With quarterbacks and wide receivers, they were really focused on tempo and speed. There were a few times where they would have live periods where the coaches would get into an offensive lineman's or a running back's face for not getting lined up too quickly, which, that tracks with things that Josh Heupel has had in the past. So those are kind of, big overarching takeaways that I had.
And everybody, wants to focus in on quarterbacks, so we'll do that. The depth chart as it stood on Saturday looked like Hendon Hooker was repping with the ones, followed by Brian Maurer, followed by Harrison Bailey. So there's sort of your 1, 2, 3 right now. And of course, it's only mid-April. That's subject to change. But right now, it's Hooker, then Maurer, then Bailey. But I know afterwards, Will, you wrote that you kind of like Brian Maurer, what he did. He did some things that grabbed my attention as well. Why did you think Maurer was the guy that maybe won the day on Saturday?
Mm-hmm. A lot of the focus that we saw for the quarterbacks was for mobility. During individual drills, they worked a lot on rolling out to both their strong side and weak side and throwing accurately while out of the pocket. And I thought that out of the 3, Maurer looked the most comfortable doing that. He was the most consistently accurate. Bailey tended to throw a little high sometimes, and Hooker just had a few passes that just got away from him. So I thought Maurer was the most comfortable doing that. And then when they moved to, live periods, offensive versus defense, Maurer had some pretty spectacular plays. He hit Ramel Keaton on the run, back of the corner of the end zone. Keaton made a nice toe-tapping catch. And then Maurer made a really nice deep throw with a really tight pocket. So I thought that he kind of stood above the others. He also threw more during live periods, it looked like. So, I think he was just definitely the most comfortable handling that movement that they want from the quarterback and that mobility.
And it was interesting because coming into spring practice, if you would have asked for me to kind of handicap the quarterback competition in terms of looking ahead to next fall and who has the best chance of being the starter for Tennessee, I might have put Maurer 4th, but behind Hendon Hooker, Harrison Bailey, and Caden Salter, who, of course, has not practiced this spring while serving an indefinite suspension. But, as we see this spring unfold after we saw what we saw on Saturday, I think I need to adjust that thinking and consider Maurer, more of a real candidate for this starting job. I was curious. I'm glad to get your takeaways on that because I came away from Saturday thinking that maybe Hendon Hooker had the best day in terms of consistency. But I, like you, thought that Maurer had some real highlight moments. And I thought maybe Maurer wasn't quite as consistent, especially as some of the live periods unfolded. But certainly, I was impressed as well. And I thought both of them separated themselves from Harrison Bailey. Now, again, it's just one day, and you run the risk of overanalyzing one day of practice. And it wasn't a scrimmage situation either. There was some 11-on-11 work, some 7-on-7 stuff, but this wasn't, full scrimmage mode or anything like that. Running backs, Will, we didn't get to see Jabari Small. He's out right now, but is expected back later this spring. And then the JUCO transfer, Tyon Evans, was out there practicing some, but was not going in all the live periods, was not going full contact. He's limited right now, banged up a little bit with injury. I suspect that come next fall, those 2 guys could be 1, 2 in the depth chart between Jabari Small and Tyon Evans. But 2 other guys that are kind of competing to be in that rotation are D. Beckwith and the freshman Jalen Wright. What did you think of those 2 guys on Saturday?
You mentioned, Dee Beckwith. I thought that he kind of had more shining moments than Jalen Wright, especially with kind of the downhill style that Heupel looks for in his running backs. He's got the power that's necessary to break some tackles. I thought he had one of the most impressive runs where he broke through 2 or 3 tackles. It was only a gain of about 7 or 8 yards, but he really showed off some true power and some true true toughness. And, he's a guy that can play wide receiver, tight end. He played all over the field in high school. He joined the program as a wide receiver last year, moved around all the while, but I think running back is where he belongs. And I think that's where he can really shine. Wright, he got less play than Dee Beckwith that I saw, but he kind of flashed his speed a couple times, especially when they're kind of doing some third and mid situations, and he'd run to the outside. He definitely flashed off that speed that he's known for and that quickness that he's known for. But if I had to give an edge between those two right now in terms of the guy that could be trending towards more playing time, again, just based off what we saw Saturday. So it's, I don't want to overreact, but I think Beckwith probably looked just a little bit better and a little bit ready. And that makes sense because he's had a year in a college program. I know he was hampered with injuries, but he's already got a little bit of experience under his belt. So I think he's a guy that could definitely factor in come this fall.
Yeah, for sure. We mentioned Wright, one of the freshmen out there on Saturday. Another one, Walker Merrill, a freshman early enrollee, did some repping with second string wide receivers. I thought he flashed at times, at other times, maybe had some struggles, but overall I thought he looked like a freshman who maybe could help this fall. And then on defense, Christian Charles, freshman, was working at second string safety. And I believe he had an interception at one point in some 7-on-7 periods, if I remember correctly. So he looked like another freshman that maybe could get in on the 2 deep this year. But sticking with that defense, of course, Tennessee dealing with 3 linebackers suspended right now, and that was a position already thin on depth coming into the spring, even if they were at full speed. Really, the linebackers to choose from, for the most part right now, are Morven Joseph, Salon Page, and Quasi Garland. And that's basically it. And I, like you, Will, I think, with Tim Banks' background, I think Tennessee's probably going to play a lot of 4-2-5 nickel defense. But beyond that, right now, they don't have a ton of linebackers. So I think that's another avenue to get around that is to play that nickel alignment. What did you think about what you saw from that linebacker spot on Saturday, and also just any general impressions of the defense? Because I certainly thought the offense looked better than the defense on Saturday, which didn't really surprise me. I would have expected that.
Yeah. Yeah. For linebackers specifically, I thought Morven Joseph did a pretty good job from, he's transitioning from being kind of a stand-up pass rusher in the pass defense to now he's going to be playing more linebacker. And he certainly has the athleticism to do that. And I think he looked pretty natural playing that. Salon Page, a guy that's been buried in the depth chart for his whole time here. Maybe not even expected to make a big impact this year, but he certainly looks the part. He's probably going to try to make the most of the reps that he's getting now while he has the opportunity, because he was running with the first team with Morven Joseph, because of injuries. Roman Harrison and Jeremy Banks were both there, but they were both hurt, but they were hanging near the linebackers the whole time. And you mentioned the suspension. So there's that too. Another guy I don't think you mentioned was Will Albright, who's been a long snapper so far this career, but he's been working with the linebackers this spring. He was there for the open practice. He played safety and wide receiver in high school. I got to see him in person a couple times, so I know that he's got the ability to. He's got the athleticism that's there. I don't think that he'll make much of an impact at that position, but linebackers are certainly a concern. Because you want as many guys as you can during the spring, but you're really limited there. And you mentioned the rest of the defense. Yeah, like you, I thought the offense looked a lot better. Particularly the secondary was concerning. I thought that it was interesting that the first 2 corners they went with were Kenneth George and Warren Burrell. And I thought that they did. I know that Kenneth George got beat a couple times working against Ramel Keaton and a couple other guys. I didn't really get to see Warren Burrell too much, but I know that the secondary looked lackluster. The safeties played pretty well. I know that there were a couple times where Tennessee tried to go deep on offense, and the safeties were kind of all over that all day. Tamarian McDonald, I think, had an interception. I know that Trevon Flowers had an interception and a couple of nice pass breakups. So the safeties could be kind of looked like a strength of the defense, but the rest of the secondary was a little bit concerning. Linebacker was concerning. And the defensive line had flashes of disruption, especially Greg Emerson. I think he made a nice couple plays, but they're still searching for that interior presence that can really affect and push through the line instead of just kind of eating up space, I think.
All right, we're about at the midpoint of spring practice as Tennessee works toward its April 24th spring game. You can check out Will's coverage from Saturday's open practice and more coverage of spring practice at GoVolsExtra.com.